Great to be here with you, Rob. Thanks for being here. And it's great to be here at eCom Week LA. I think the first question I want to ask is because you are a business owner, mogul, but you've also been a skateboarder. So first of all, how has your professional skateboarding career contributed to your businesses and your own company?
Well, it's kind of like my life was dual tracked. I fell in love with skateboarding and met a serial entrepreneur who owned the skate shop, and then fell in love with business at the same time when I was 11 years old. And really, as I was pursuing becoming a professional skateboarder, I was also envisioning my first company that I would create, and I almost created them simultaneously, turned pro and started my first company almost in the same year. But one thing that I think I really learned from skateboarding is sort of the process of learning a trick can be applied to almost any bit of goal achieving, right? Because you have to decide what trick do you want to do, and then you have to break down how you are going to learn it. Then you've got to start with the ollie, then the backside 50-50, then the Smith grind, then the backside Smith grind. Now you do it on a rail if your goal was to do a backside Smith grind on a rail. So I think the process of learning a trick and the thrill of when you learn it can be applied to almost any goal setting. And of course, what happens in that process, you try it 1,000 times and it doesn't work, and you keep making adjustments and make adjustments. And as long as you keep moving towards getting close to landing that trick, you stay motivated, you stay hungry, and eventually learn what you need to do to make it happen, and then the thrill of making it happen. So that's kind of like one thing from skateboarding that I think really is connected with what I've went on to achieve in my life.
That's really cool. And so I want to hear from you. What is the most ridiculous business goal that you've ever set and reached before?
For me, probably, when I built the Dyrdek machine, the whole concept was like how I want to, control my destiny and build companies to sell from idea to acquisition. And the first one that I decided to build to sell with my new system was Super Jacket Productions. And the goal was to build and sell it in 3 years, and, really, I had met with an investment banker at the time, and the people that would represent the actual acquisition, right? And they laid out, here's all the things that you need to do. Here's the type of revenue. Here's where you're going to get your margin from. This is how big it needs to be. And it needs to be at least 3 years. And I said, okay, I have the structure and the understanding of the opportunity. And then I set out, and the first thing I did is I used all of my unfair advantages because I had my own television show. I had a relationship with those that ran the network, and I negotiated to get the production, and then I financed building out the entire production company in order to create all those margins, and then built and sold that company. Went back to those bankers 3 years later, and we took it to market and sold that company in 3 years. Now, the difference was my goal was to sell it for 50 to 75 million, and it ended up selling in the 180 range.
Wow. So sometimes your goals have been exceeded from what you would.
Well, look, it's the epitome of when you have a big goal, the end game, is I still wanted to sell a company in 3 years, right? And then I figured out the path to get there, but actually how the path unfolded is I could have never planned, right? But the steps that I needed to take for that to unfold, I did understand. I knew the first thing that I had to do was I needed to get the production of ridiculousness under the production company if I had any shot of building this company. So it was the easiest and clearest, definitive tactical goal to even have a shot to go and create this big opportunity in the end there. So when you do that, now you have belief. You're like, okay, now I have this. I'm instantly profitable. I can staff up and build it out. Now I got to go sell more shows. It's almost like the big goal never changes, but you learn more and more and see more and more opportunity as you lead towards that goal. And in my case, it presented itself to create an opportunity that was much bigger than I ever imagined when I sold it.
Yeah. And so I think a lot of times entrepreneurs are told that they need to lower their expectations, maybe, or that they're setting unrealistic goals. Do you believe that there's such a thing as an unrealistic goal?
I come across this like mainly in young, like less experienced entrepreneurs who will be doing $70 million in revenue in year three, right? And it's in a business that doesn't even have the ability to scale that fast, call it a CPG brand with heavy cost structure, all these things, and long lead times and distribution. I think any entrepreneur should always build realistic goals, right? Now, and by realistic, I mean that you believe that there's a pathway there, right? When you just put a giant number and say, I'm going to hit this number, you're really wishing that you hit that number, as opposed to being able to see that, well, if I open up this distribution and get to market here and get this sell through, like I could get to that number in year four. If I get to that number in year four, I could take on this capital and I could grow over the next 3 years and be $1 billion business, right? I want to be $1 billion business and change the world. Like all of that's possible if you can at least envision the milestones that you actually need to achieve, because that will build the belief along the way that you can actually achieve that insane goal, right? And again, you'll always be reevaluating a big goal, because the moment you start something, it's the most exciting because you think you're going to do it. You've planned all the things, you've got everything set. You're like, oh, this is going to be amazing. You're like, we're going to be so big. And then as soon as you start it, you're like, this is impossible. I don't even know what this is. I don't know what that is. It's this chaos. And you slowly learn more and more and more, which then adjusts how you look at your milestones and your goals and even your big goal. And again, in my case, it got even bigger. And sometimes you'll reel it into like, okay, actually, this would be ideal if I could get this company to 25 million in revenue instead of $1 billion company and sell it for 100 million. Can evolve as you evolve as an entrepreneur too. But I think never limit to yourself to the type of goal, but make sure you spend the time to at least understand the pathway to achieve it.
Mm-hmm. And so what would you say is the definition of a ridiculous goal?
Well, I mean, look, for me, my goal in 2016 when I launched the Dyrdek machines, I'm going to create $1 billion in liquidity, right? Instead of chasing some aspect of, being a billionaire on Forbes list through value or stock price, like I'm going to pay taxes on $1 billion, right? That was my goal. And at the time I had never built and sold a company in my life. Right. And so if my goal was I'm going to create $1 billion in liquidity by building and selling 30 to 50 companies that I own between 25 and 75% of, oh, it's getting real tactical. But I never had ever done it in my life. And I needed to sell the first one to be like, I needed to start building the value, then sell the first one to begin to be like, oh, you're really going to do it. Then the second, third, fourth, fifth. Now it's like, there's no question that I'm going to do it in my mind. Now I'm past the threshold of even any self-doubt on that ridiculous goal. And now I'm accelerating towards it, because I've proven to myself that I'm capable of doing it.
Mm-hmm. And so what are the next steps when you know you want to set a goal? How do you do that practically? Do you make a list? Do you strategize? Do you create a diagram? What have you done in the past in your companies to make sure you're setting those expectations for yourself and then keeping yourself accountable to them?
Yeah, look, I like to plan it by years, right? Like, so you and sort of your milestones by years and timeline, right? So it's like you gotta, and they're flexible again, right? But you wanna start at the end and define it very as clear as you possibly can in the very beginning, right? In the case of selling Super Jacket, I knew I wanted to build and sell it, but I knew now that I needed that it was going to trade off EBITDA, right? So I had to build a highly profitable business. So that would control how I built it. And then I knew that it was going to trade on 6 times EBITDA, and that there was about these 30 different like private equity and public and private production companies that would buy it. Right. So it's like you're so specific on what that target's going to be. And now you've got to go and do it. So if the more specific you know where that end is, it will pull you towards it. Right. The more specific you get, and you constantly are evaluating it and looking at it, but you want to spend as much time in the beginning, get as specific with that big goal so that then, hey, that'll probably take me, in my case, it was like, I'm going to do it in 3 years. That meant I needed to immediately make significant revenue in the first year. If companies that are going to acquire you need to see 3 years of EBITDA, that means I need to be highly profitable in year 1. So again, I mapped all of that out, right? And then it all went back to the very first tactical goal that I needed to achieve to make this actually work. And then I put all my energy into that. But I think you can write it down. You can put milestones to it, but I think the more detail you can be to the end, the pathway will reveal itself. And I just think a lot of times people just don't focus on the details of the end goal as much as the idea of the end goal, right? If I would have just said, I want to sell a company, then you're no man's land, right? Okay, I want to build and sell a production company. Okay, cool. That's at least specific. Well, what does that mean? Well, okay, I want to grow this company to 15 million in EBITDA and sell it in 3 years to one of these 30 people, right? It's like, okay, well, what are all the steps you have to do to acquire that? So to me, that would just be one thing that I think people always underestimate and should really consider putting extra effort into.
Mm-hmm. Yeah. And let's talk about the mindset aspect of that for a minute. How do you prepare yourself mentally to believe in the goals that you're setting and, conjure up the confidence to even pursue them?
Yeah, and look, I'm think about where confidence is built from, right? Like confidence is built through experience, right? When you say you're going to do something and you do it and you learn it, like you're like, wow, I can do that. Now I understand it. I have experience. I can do it easier. Now I know I'm going to do it. That sort of aspect, right? And I think like when you're given an opportunity to study and get as much understanding of what you want to achieve in the beginning and setting that goal, but you're only going to understand what it's actually going to take as you do it, because you're going to learn all the things that you don't know. And confidence and self-belief is grown over time, right? You don't talk yourself into being confident. You know what I mean? You grow confidence over time. And how that's done is that first milestone that you actually know you're going to achieve. As long as you're making progress towards it, you're building belief. Then when you hit that first one, now you believe. Then you hit the second one, then you really believe. Now at the third one, you're past halfway to your goal. Now you really know you're going to do it. And that's where the self-confidence and the belief has been built, because there's no doubt when you do something, you set a big goal, it's a calculated leap of faith. You know what I mean? You can't plan out everything because it's just not the way the world works. And at some point you've got to stop planning and take the shot. And the truth is it's this nice medium in the middle. And you want to, without any doubt in your soul, believe that you have the ability to hit that first milestone on your way to the goal. Because if you don't, and you're just floundering and not knowing where you're headed and trying all these different things, that's where you get into a lot of trouble and where the self-doubt creeps in. And now you're like, you don't know, if you start questioning yourself, questioning decisions, you get into that world and you can pick yourself apart and never even begin the process of potentially achieving a goal,
Mm-hmm. Right. And so I was listening to a recent podcast you did with Lewis Howes when you said that you can't be obsessed with the outcome of the goal.
Mm-hmm.
Instead, focus on the process becoming more evolved, effortless, and enjoyable. Can you expand a little bit on that and like what you mean and how have you done that exactly in your company and one of the goals that you've achieved?
Yeah, I mean, look, I think it's the idea of there's these three or five sort of ranges you can live your life in, right? You can dwell and be upset and woe is me. On the other spectrum, you can be hopeful and wish, right? But in the middle, you're either solving problems, you're experiencing the present, or you're creating the future, right? And so when you think of a big goal that you're obsessed with, if you're spending time dreaming about the goal and what's going to happen when it happens, if you're just focused on the outcome of the goal, you're basically making no progress. It's no different than if you were sitting in a woe is me negative saying, I'm never going to achieve this, I don't know what I'm doing. It is equally as bad to be obsessed with it being in the end, because in the middle, you're solving problems, pushing you forward. You're either experiencing and growing and learning inside the process, or you're creating the future, right? And that is where action lives, and where ultimately loving and living in that zone is going to drive you towards achieving your big goal. So I never think twice about my giant goal of $1 billion in liquidity. What am I focused on? I'm focused on getting better and better at curating ideas, individuals, and building sustainable, profitable, acquirable businesses, right? And I went from looking at business as brand and business, and I had this system that I would build companies in, and then I realized halfway through of building, I built 7 companies and realized, oh my goodness, it's not brand and business. It's brand, product, media, marketing, sales, operations, finance, and leadership. It is this engine that actually makes a business successful. And I have to understand and build companies with people that understand those 7 core capabilities. I used to just look for really driven, ambitious people with good ideas, right? And the truth is they don't have the ability to holistically build a business. If you're a great product person but don't understand marketing, sales, and operations, you're definitely not going to understand finance, and the business is just never going to be strategically built with the right strength to find success, right? So to me, I didn't look at business like that when I started the machine in 2016, and it's the process of getting better and better. And over time now, one of my big lessons was learning capital staging, where I would just put in $1 million, put in 500,000, put in 700, thinking this was going to be enough it needed to go. And then the product was 8 months behind getting to market, and then they didn't hit the revenue numbers because they didn't identify their consumer early enough. Now it's a year later, they're out of cash, and now they've made no progress, and now we're trying to get someone to invest because I'm not ready to put up more money after burning through all that money. I really learned that as another sort of major piece of it. But today, even after, at this point, we're going into building our 17th and 18th business since 2016, 6 of which have been acquired. I still am only focused on getting better and better at curating the entrepreneurs, their skill sets, helping balance out their weaknesses and their strengths, and finding the better ideas and the better markets with the better opportunity with growth and potential acquisition, right? I'll never like in venture, they're like, oh, it's like, you need 2 or 3 out of 50 to work, right? And in my mind, I'm not, even though I'm called a venture creation studio, in my mind, I am like, how can I never lose, right? Like, I don't want to play by your rules of all you need is 2 of these to work to make all your capital investment. Like, I really want my track record to be like, he evolved his system to where he never had a company that did not work, right? That is a different level of focus when you're focusing and loving the process. And then the outcome of that big goal of $1 billion liquidity, not only is it inevitable at this point, but the scale of it will probably be way beyond my wildest dreams, way beyond even that as a goal, even though it was big and audacious in 2016 when I said it.
Yeah. And so let's talk about failure for a minute. What do you do when you fail? Or maybe you're just not hitting that goal as soon as you expected. What do you do with that, and how do you learn from it?
Look, it's you want to fail through 2 lenses, right? Your goal is to fail proactively. You know what I mean? Like you want to be able to like build a plan and look at where the weak spots are in it and where you may like find failure. You would like to be able to know when it's coming, even if it's inevitable, right? Because a lot of times I've had, I built a 360 VR company with an amazing founder. All what was happening in the market was Instagram Live, and live content was coming, the same convergence of VR and 360. And he had come up with a technology that would allow to put cameras and broadcast 360 video for $3,000 a camera all over the world versus Next VR, who had raised, $200 million and their units are like, 300 grand. It was like, this is going to open up the ability to basically travel the world in your phone via 360 video. I called it explortainment. This is going to be extraordinary. And literally like 360 video just died. Like it was like 3D TV. Like it looked like it was going to be this extraordinary convergence and it just died. And it was market. The consumer just never adopted it, right? So yes, it was a failure, but like how I look at failure is we knew if nobody had, if we knew we were on a curve, and if the customers, if there hadn't been adoption yet in the market, and we were hoping we would hit it at the right time and be the first person, but the adoption never came. So it was clear to us like why it wasn't going to work. Equally painful to walk away from, because you put all that time and energy and excitement and capital into seeing it. But what did it do to me? It evolved me, right? Like, a lot of times people say, oh, there's no failure, there's no L's except for lessons, right? And to me, it's okay, yes, that's an easy way to look at it. But the truth is, you want to fail in one direction because you want to be able to fail forward and evolve, right? Because you want to learn and evolve. Because what's my mastery? I want to master curating ideas, individuals, and turning them into in building sustainable, profitable, acquirable businesses. That's my mastery. So when I have a company that completely goes out of business, but I evolved forward, because what did I learn? I learned that, hey, you've got to be really cautious about customer adoption and thinking you're going to make a market and understand that. So that's now a new intuitive piece of my toolkit of when I evaluate opportunities, right? Based off of how I evolved from that failure and grew from that failure, right? It is failing, getting a lesson, and then having nowhere to apply it, and trying something completely different, failing over there, and I got that lesson too, like is not going to serve you nearly as much as failing forward will towards your personal mastery or what your big goal is ultimately,
Mm-hmm. Yeah. And how do you stay positive during all of that, especially during a setback in the middle of that disappointment? How do you stay positive?
I mean, look, for me, it's since it's different for me since I am the Sherpa to my founder, my co-founder and partner. I am not the operator, right? I help shape the idea, I capitalize it, and I'm your advisor. And I have 18 other companies and built an extraordinary amount of wealth. So that doesn't like affect me emotionally, physically, or whatever way, the same way it affects the founder, right? Because it's their one dream, their one idea, and it's extraordinarily painful, and I think, again, it is part of the process of knowing if you want to be a successful entrepreneur and there's like a headwind that broke you, the market, different trends, these different sort of things, like you can fight for positivity and optimism as much as you can through that process. But the truth is, like, you're going to have to live in the pain of it no matter what. And the only way out of it is to either quit or problem solve it into a way, or create a new path, the oh so popular pivot, in order to continue to find another possible pathway for success in this. There's no doubt, like in the fire, it's extraordinarily difficult to just simply say, I'm going to be positive. because the only way you can truly like find positivity is to be making progress towards a path forward, a new goal, a pivot, all these different sort of ways that may evolve this into something working again. Because there's just, when you got to put something definitively out of business, it always hurts. There is just no way around it. Even when your life's not depending on it, but it's still one of your projects. It is extraordinarily painful.
Yeah, that makes sense. I want to give some time for audience questions. We have a couple coming in. So we have one, this audience member is asking, how have you made connections early on in your career when you were just getting started? And how would you have changed your approach if you were starting today?
Yeah, I think a lot of people, especially people that don't have access, always um, look at this sort of piece of the equation because they see other people that have access, and it seems like their growth has been accelerated, right? And obviously there's good and bad ways to approach how to build relationships, but I truly believe it is about your ability to create a value exchange. There's been many times there's people have cold emailed me. The guy that does all of our graphics for my professional skateboarding league, Street League, that went on to do graphics for Star Wars and Nike and all these massive companies, he cold emailed me and said, I have this graphics company and I'd love to do graphics for Street League skateboarding. Here's my work. Now, he found my email and cold emailed me, but it was the quality of his work, the way that he approached me, and the value of where I'm like, wow, this would be an opportunity for me to get some really high quality work at a way less expensive price than I'm currently doing it with someone that has a skate background. This is perfect. So, I use that as an example of, at the end of the day, you're always exchanging value as it relates to meaningful relationships, right? So if you're just asking or you're just hoping, versus here's what I have that I think could help you. Could you help me? Or here, you inspired me to create this. Do you have advice for how I could scale this or make this my own or do whatever it may be? It is creating the tactical approach will build a pathway to those relationships that you desire.
Mm-hmm. And really quick before we wrap up, someone's asking about the NFT market. What's your 30-second take on whether it will last and whether the hype will continue?
I mean, look, I think NFTs are here forever. I think it's a new sort of evolved way to create value in a digital asset. I think it will just be how they are built and who builds them and what kind of goes along with them, right? The beauty of it is the creators are incentivized because it's the market now where the creator it's an annuity for the creator. So they get a piece of every transaction as they continue to create value for it, which doesn't exist currently in the art market, which is, something similar to sort of what's happening in NFTs. So look, there's going to be a million NFTs, millions that are worth nothing. Just like there's a million paintings on the walls that are worth nothing. But the NFT market itself is only going to continue to evolve and get more dynamic and create more value, but it will be a part of your life for the rest of your life. So get yourself a wallet and start buying some for fun.
Love it. Thank you so much, Rob. And this was a great chat.
Thank you.